My life is a fracking mess.
Energy. It's all about energy. Our world is dependent on resources that provides us energy. We have things we need to power, such as cars, ovens, and electricity. Everyday things. Some of the most important of these resources are natural gas and oil. We collect these resources here in the US, and it provides us with lots of money. But how do we get these resources, you may ask? Let me introduce you to hydraulic fracking. Hydraulic fracking, or fracking, is the modern, most effective way of collecting natural gas and oil in place of drilling. Drilling can only find some pockets of these resources in the ground, while fracking picks up some and a whole lot more. We can find these pores of gas and oil in what geologists call shale rock. Shale rock is a sedimentary rock that is made up of many tiny layers called laminations. This rock also is fissile, meaning that it can easily break up along those laminations. Through the heating of the earth, shale rock that's made of tiny organic matter can completely transform into natural gas and oil. It collects together because it gets trapped under overhead rocks such as sandstone. That's how the resources form. But why is fracking so effective? Well, fracking involves building a giant well in an L shape. An L shape allows us to hit more pores of natural gas and oil along the shale rock layer, hence the horizontal part of the L. Once the well is in place, we fill it up with lots of water. The pressure of the water is so great that it can break apart the rock at the bottom of the L. Then it releases the resources into the well, where with special chemicals and equipment, we can transport the resources back to the surface. Now, while this is very effective, it has its risks. Environmental policies have been conflicted with fracking's effect on drinking water. 30% of our fresh water comes from groundwater, and within a kilometer of fracking sites, drinking water wells have had methane levels 17 times higher. What's so bad about methane? Well, methane can be flammable and explosive when mixed with air, and in confined spaces, it can cause asphyxiation. It also causes problems with well pumps and water systems.
The use of fracking can be traced back to before the 1950s in Kansas, and the first license for fracking was obtained by the Halliburton Oil Well Cementing Company. But as even more, fracking was used across the United States by 1968. Fast forward to 1989, the Legal Environment Association Foundation, LEAF, sought for a case with which it could prove that fracking needed regulation by the EPA. The well of a family in Alabama was allegedly contaminated by fracking. The LEAF argued that fracking should be regulated under the Class II injection program. Eventually, the LEAF directed its concerns to the EPA in 1990. The EPA proceeded to establish a group that would investigate whether fracking contaminated underground water. The LEAF repeatedly tried to involve the EPA into fracking regulation, particularly by claiming that the Safe Drinking Water Act required it. However, Carol Browner, the EPA administrator, then stated that Congress did intend for the EPA to regulate fracking, but the EPA was not able to avoid responsibility for fracking once the Court of Appeals ruled that in 97 that fracking fell under the simple definition of underground injection. Even though several organizations supported the EPA in taking the case to the Supreme Court, even by filing amicus curiae, the agency decided not to go forward with it. Since the LEAF was not satisfied with the EPA's work in fracking regulation, they filed a petition for a writ of mandamus. The EPA had already made plans for possible developments of regulations, but once the court approved the mandamus, the agency was forced to act promptly. Soon, the EPA realized that developing the placing fracking regulations would be very difficult. The OGB tried to help by proposing new rules, but once again, the LEAF disapproved. As a result, the EPA was unable to accept new rules in Alabama, and the state had no fracking program that was qualified to operate. Eventually, the EPA approved the program of the State Oil and Gas Board of Alabama in March of 1999. Constant conflict came from the EPA's approval of fracking program and the dissatisfaction from the LEAF. The LEAF attempted. We just stop that.
Okay,
Just stop that. The Leaf attempted to sue in 2000, but the court decided to deny the motion. The EPA made another study in which they concluded that fracking was not linked to water contamination in 2004. Furthermore, the Energy Policy Act of 2005, signed by George Bush, states that fracking was not included for regulation under the SDWA. In an attempt to reassure the good name of fracking, several organizations released the additives and chemicals used in fracking, but without specific amounts or an evaluation of the water's condition. Lastly, the EPA issued a final 6-year report of fracking in 2016, in which they did link fracking to water contamination.
In the government, Republicans and Democrats often clash when it comes to concerns about fracking. Democrats strive to impose as many regulations as possible to protect the environment, while Republicans look to expand business opportunities for drilling and fracking companies. In 2005, under President George W. Bush, Congress passed the Energy Policy Act of 2005, which prohibited the EPA and regulators to supervise fracking companies and the chemicals they use. This act was based partially on a study by the EPA that found that fracking into coalbed methane reservoirs did not pose a significant risk to drinking water, although the research was unsound. Fracking wells are considered a Class II injection well, wells that are used only to inject fluids associated with oil and natural gas production. While other classes of wells are used to inject fluids deep into the earth, Class II wells are put under the most restrictions due to the dangerous implications that could come with a malfunction. However, following the passing of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, hydraulic fracturing wells were no longer subject to many of the regulations and requirements that other Class II wells were put under. To fix many of the contamination issues, the Energy Policy Act must be amended to make fracturing locations abide by the restrictions and regulations put into place by the Safe Drinking Water Act. This will put the machines involved in fracturing under the supervision of the Underground Injection Control, putting fracking wells under many of the restrictions currently imposed on the other types of injection wells. With the neck of the EPA breathing down their back, state-run UIC programs will be forced to diligently enforce requirements and punish those who violate the national standards. Putting these measures into place will hopefully make hydraulic fracturing a safer and a more sustainable resource extraction process.
Please give us an A. Please.